Hello, everybody. This is your host, Aram Melkoumov, and you're listening to another episode of the Product Innovation Series. Today, I'm here with Manos Kyriakakis, hopefully I got that right, who is the head of product and growth at a company called Simpler, which aims to allow shoppers at all over the world to check out from anywhere easily. Previously, Manos worked with other VC-backed startups in industries such as insurance tech, ad tech, travel tech, including Pricefox, Avocarrot, Market Group, and Welcome Pickups. And he also actually co-founded his own company as well. He also has his own newsletter writing about product and growth. Look out for the link to sign up in the show notes with this episode when we go live. Manos, thank you so much for giving me the time today, and really excited to have you on our show.
Thank you for the invitation, Aram, and it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here.
Cool. Well, let's get started. So the first question I have, because we have a lot of I think discussion topics we want to get to today, but I want to talk about early days product market fit. It's always a challenge for certain people to kind of figure out how do I get to product market fit? What do I do to get to product market fit? What does success look like, etc. So when a startup is about to just get traction, but hasn't done so yet, and there's lots of implications and dangers for product development that come after, right? So the first question I have for you is, what types of product marketing or product market fit activities have you done or do you do when building out a startup that you've seen, work for you in the past or currently?
Yeah, so indeed, it's a very tricky period because everybody, is booming because you just landed your first few customers and you get your traction. But, early product market fit to begin with, I would say that it's very easy to confuse it with the idea validation stage, right? Where the idea validation, you just have a few customers paying for your product. In the early product market fit, you need to have your first, let's say, few customers who are actually successful. And talking about the activities that you mentioned, I think that in that case, customer development is something very important. Being very close to customers, talking to them, trying to understand their needs, where they come from, their pain points, and how you can adjust your offering so that you can actually serve their needs in the best way possible. Because in the early stages where you don't have many data points from your customer, it's very easy to, for things to get blurry, and you don't really know what you should prioritize, what's more important and what not. So yeah, I would say that in that case, this being really close to your target audience is very, very important.
And so what, you mentioned it, right? There's validation. It's like you get some customers who are paying for you.
Mm-hmm.
But then product market fit is different, right?
That's right.
So what would you say is the biggest difference? Is it specific length of time that people are paying you? Is it other metrics that help define that you actually hit product market fit?
Yeah, so in that case, you could definitely split product market fit into certain stages. So as you said, early product market fit is to have your first few successful customers, and the word successful here is very, very important. So those customers are usually also your first advocates and so on. Whereas, in true product market fit, you're way deeper into your, let's say, in your journey as a company. At that stage, I like the Mark Andreessen definition, where they tell you that you're in a good market and you have a product that really satisfies the needs of your market. So yeah, in that case, one great indicator is your revenues. They're usually, growing very, very fast, and the demand for your product is growing at a rate that you can hardly satisfy, right? In that case, you could have an example like as having so many requests from your users that you can hardly keep up with development, and you can hardly deliver product. Also, your product is growing in maybe an unmanageable rate. Whereas, when you're in the early stages where your product market fit is not clear, you're at that point where you constantly get requests as prerequisites and as hard requirements to close deals, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. And so let's talk about Simpler now. In your current role as head of product and growth, what was particularly challenging in early days of product market fit at Simpler?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of things that at the end of the day, they boiled down to us finding our niche and focusing on one certain persona. And it's still early days. It's not that we're that much of an old company and so on. So we're still fine-tuning stuff around our product market fit. But in an industry like ours, like e-commerce, there's a huge spectrum of customer segments and customer profiles that you can address to. So at the beginning, it was very blurry for us because we had our first few customers, our first few merchants that were actually had adopted our solution, but we were facing certain difficulties. And to name a few, we were not, for example, we were not as urgent need for them as we would like. So they were prospects that we considered them to be important for us, and sales took forever to close, or there were feature requests that were prerequisites for deals to close. And to make matters worse, we didn't really understand what was the most important thing to prioritize, or at least it was hard for us to understand that. And all those were clear symptoms for us that we were not there yet, that we still needed to focus more if we wanted, to succeed. And yeah, this became really apparent for us, and this is what we actually did. So we had to laser focus, and so that we could gain more clarity as to who the customer was and what their needs were. So we decided that, we cannot serve every single merchant. We cannot serve merchants of all sizes in terms, of the revenues that they're having. We cannot serve merchants of all verticals, or even merchants using the same all the technologies. So we picked a very specific segment, and this is what we started laser focusing on. And at that point, the needs started becoming more consolidated. We started to have a way better understanding of which needs were the more important ones and which were not. And we achieved all that by really being too close to them. And obviously, there were also other indicators that we were tracking, because we suddenly saw our sales closing way easier. As we were adjusting our product better to their needs. Our revenues also started growing at a better rate. Also, we saw our churn, or our retention, if you'd like, getting better and better, and especially on the cohorts, that were closer to our target persona and our target merchants. So this is what we did and what we still do, right? I mean, it's a constant optimization process there.
Okay. And so from the point of hitting product market fit, you probably had, maybe it was an MVP, maybe it was even more than an MVP. But then from that point forward, how did you kind of avoid creating like a Frankenstein products? What I mean by that is like, when you're building something, you're going to be incurring technical debt no matter what you do, right? It might be, you might be on the right track in terms of the right feature that, is maybe needed, or maybe you guys think is needed, etc. So when you're iterating on all these features, how do you know that you're doing it with the right purpose?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in this case, it is a very important factor is to have a clear vision about the broad change that you're trying to bring. And this might sound a bit theoretical, but I strongly believe that it's super important for any company and any product that wants to succeed. And it has been a pitfall, I think, for many businesses. And this also helps you avoid entering an endless iteration loop and creating, as you said, a Frankenstein product. And the first thing I think that you need to do is to check that your vision is strong and you have a clear strategy that, you use those two as your compass on what to build and what not to build, more importantly. And maybe to take it a step further and connect it with what we were discussing before, you need to know who you're building for, be close to them, and really strive to understand their needs. So this is gonna give you that answer.
Okay, and so outside of Simpler, in a prior roles, whether it was a company you co-founded or in other roles when you were in product or other examples, right? Have you ever seen, maybe a situation or two where you saw companies build out a product that kind of fell into this trap where they were building out, features without, the right vision?
Yeah, we could talk about many examples, and from the big ones, but I think that many people have written endlessly about it. I won't take an example from a company that I used to work for, although, it's quite easy to fall in the trap of having feature teams that keep, are feature factories and keep building and building and building. I think that an example could be one of our ex-competitors in Simpler who, and I'm saying ex because they recently shut down their operations. You may have heard of a company called Fast, for example. So it was a quite...
Of course.
Yeah. So there...
I think everybody's heard about Fast.
Yeah. So in my personal opinion, and this is totally my opinion, part of the reason that they did fail was that they did not manage. Actually, they scaled too early before actually managing to achieve real product market fit, right? And part of I'm not saying that they will building stuff without having a purpose in any way, but I think that it's a good example of what happens if you have some great traction. You have in my opinion, they had a product that's with huge potential and backing of investors like Stripe and so on. But I think that the pressure to grow too fast was pushed them to, and their growth was not sustainable. So sadly, both for the industry and obviously for the people that all this affected, they had the worst possible result.
Mm-hmm. You talked about product leaders having the right vision, and so I fortunately have the privilege to talk to a lot of product individuals like yourself, and I'm always curious to ask a question around how do you maintain and ensure alignment with, say, the founding team or the co-founders who may or not be product attuned, in terms of making sure that you're on track, you have the right kind of strategy in place, you're not deviating too far off, and the whole team is focused, right? Some people do kind of quarterly product boards, what have you done, what do you do that you've seen work in order to make sure that product vision is aligned with all stakeholders?
Mm-hmm. So this is a great question, and what we, as a product leader, you are the one that needs to make sure that you're protecting this vision, that this vision is relevant, and everybody is aligned around this vision. And founders are obviously extremely important stakeholders into that, and you need to make sure that alignment is there. So for us, for example, we have regular syncs and alignments where we review our vision, review our strategy, and make sure that one, we are aligned, and two, our vision, and strategy are what they should be. So I'm a great fan actually of the opinion that has been expressed by Radhika Dutt, who I think was a past guest into the show. I admire her a lot, and yes. I think that through her book, Radical Product Thinking, what he's saying about as checkpoints about your vision is super to the point. So, what we do and what we did this quarter as well was that we sat down and with the founders, and we had that session where we started from our vision and evaluated that, what's our vision? Is it centered around the problems that we were currently that we want to solve and we aim to solve for our customers? Do we have a clear end state about this vision, and are we all aligned around this end state and around how this would look like? And the third part is, does this have real value about the customers and the segment that we're actually intent to impact? So this is the first exercise that we need to solve, because it's very rare, in my opinion, that everybody, and my experience, that everybody is going to be fully aligned around those topics. And, if you're not aligned, then you need to start having data and bring data points in order to see how you should adjust it. And usually those data points should be coming directly from your market, right? Like, it's not only the product manager that is close to the customers, it's also sales, support. You need to analyze those insights and see how these should shape your vision.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. My last few questions I want to talk about a different topic, which is, I think, well known when it comes to product. It's about, well, it's a few things. It's like confidence when it comes to product, right? There's arrogance when it comes to product, and then assumptions in product. The three, I think arrogance and confidence go well together, where if you're super arrogant, you're going to have struggles, right? Like when it comes to being successful. Having mentioned those things, confidence, arrogance, making assumptions in product, what's like the first thing or two that come to your mind when, you think about that?
Product managers at the early stages of their careers. No, okay, just kidding. But yeah, it's very easy at your early steps to fall prey into that. It's very easy for us to fall in love with our ideas and hypotheses and neglect to do a reality check and check them. And maybe we have this urge to see to create the product and have that out in the market, that you might neglect to do a proper investigation in advance, or even if you do move ahead with implementation, you may neglect to measure if what you had in mind actually had the impact that you expected this to have. This is something that has personally happened to me, and maybe it was not a matter of arrogance. It could be. I still remember the first feedback session with my manager at the time, when he told me that, sometimes you are very overconfident in your ideas. So it's not only the fact that you are like you may neglect stuff, but you transfer that to the team, because if you're overconfident, it's easy for the other people to believe you and not challenge you in that assumption. So I think that understanding this and ensuring that you have this hypothesis, but you need to be also humble and make a proper research and investigation to validate your assumptions is essential if you want to be successful in this craft. And the earlier you realize it, the better for you.
Mm-hmm. And so I do kind of agree with you that I think early stage product managers either have too much ego or they have imposter syndrome, where they start thinking about, I'm going to fake it till I make it or whatever, right? So I want to ask you, in your experience with yourself, with other PMs, or with anybody you've crossed paths with in product, how have you seen people been able to successfully remove ego from the equation?
I think that it's okay. Obviously, it highly depends on your character, right? I mean, every person is different. So for some people, it's easier. For other people, it's a bit harder. I think that in order to do that, you need to gradually learn to put down your defenses, especially when you're listening to other people's opinions. and especially when you disagree on something with them. Our usual first instinct is to defend our opinion in that case. So I think that it's important to practice on letting the other side speak and make an honest attempt to understand where they're coming from and the rationale. So at the end of the day, you need to start asking why and make an honest effort to really listen to them and understand them. It's not necessary to agree with them at the end, but your goal in product is to build the right solution, right? It doesn't matter whose idea it was or whose opinion is right or wrong. So I think it's a process. I think it needs time, especially for some people it's harder. But you need, at the end of the day, to listen to really listen to people and really try and see their own perspectives.
Okay. Outside of like imposter syndrome or ego, there's another one that is in product, and it's like biases. There's different types of biases. Bias towards data, bias towards whatever, right? But what are the ones that you've had to deal with often when it came to that?
I think it's the most frequent one, and it's a confirmation bias. It's this thing where you usually come across in research areas or when you have to deal with data, and your data and research always backs your initial assumptions or hypotheses. I think this happens quite frequently in product and in general in companies, and you're looking for those data that are actually going to validate your hypothesis, validating any signs or data points that what you have in mind might be wrong or might be a little bit off. So I think that if your findings constantly validate your assumptions or hypotheses, this is probably an indicator that you did not dig enough, or at least deep enough. And your research might be a little bit superficial. So, you might check if you're suffering from the confirmation bias in that case.
Okay, awesome, Manos. Last question I want to ask is, you've been doing product for a long time. Is there anything that you wish people asked you that they never do about whether it's like a specific takeaway, experience, or like don't do this, kind of like message?
I think yes. It's not like they never ask, obviously, but I wish that people ask more. Maybe it's connected with what we were discussing before. So I wish people ask more. Why do you say that? Like asking you to elaborate on something, especially when you have a difference in opinion. I think it's maybe a leftover from the job because you usually have to be analytical and dig deep into things. So as a product manager, you usually learn to ask that, but usually sometimes other people do not do that. So I think that it might sound a bit generic, but it could be very helpful for any party, especially when you have to collaborate with someone, to ask why, where you're coming from and why did you do that. And this goes both ways, right?
Yeah. Okay. Actually, last question. When it comes to, there's a lot of product leaders I spoke to some are like very, very data driven in their decision making process. Others use the term data aware, meaning like they use it as like a reference point, but they still use other factors. What aspect of that do you take? And like, do you take more of like I use data and then I trust my gut, or I go speak to customers to confirm, or like what are some layers that you do in order to make sure you're not just being totally reliant on data for your decision making?
I take the aspect that I think that data are an excellent starting point and you should start from that in order to identify, where the issue is, any potential issues and where they lie, to give you a great idea of, we have a problem here and it's probably coming on that spot or on this area. And then obviously you can trust your gut, but I think that the best way is to go out and talk with a few customers or, perform any other user research activities, like if it's not something that you can tackle with speaking to customers, like I don't know, it could be any usability tests or anything like that, or get to the other tools that you might be using. It could be user surveys, exit surveys. In general, the goal here is to get some more qualitative feedback, some more qualitative information in order to formulate some hypotheses to test. And then, once you have them and you can trust not your gut, but you can evaluate them and prioritize them and see what you should roll out and test if this is going to work or not. So I would take the approach of being data driven, take some qualitative insights, and then actually put something out and see if that works or if you need to change it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Manos. I think that's a wrap for today. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this knowledge. And always thank you to our listeners for tuning in and enjoying the show and supporting us. Once again, Manos, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Aram. Pleasure to be here.